you shouldn't judge someone who's not a Christian based on your Christian belief and standard.
As a Christian, do you drink caffeine? Do you like doom scroll on like TikTok?
Yeah, I drink coffee. I doom scroll as well. Christians are just normal people too.
Do you have any stories of things that you prayed for and there was a sign that instantly confirmed it?
I remember like going back to America. I was like, "Ugh, window seat for 15 hours." And I look over and I see the Northern Lights. It's like a little gift from God.
I would have always thought that if someone was like reading the Bible, praying every day, negativity or mental health wouldn't really come into play.
That's a stereotype a lot of people have towards Christians. There is this one website that allows you to write letters to your future self, telling me, like, remember what's the most important thing in life. It's not about achievements you get, it's about how you live your life, how you love other people.
How's everything been? How's your week been?
It's been good. How's your week been?
Pretty busy. About to fly to Japan on Sunday. So I've been just trying to cram a bunch of works, just long hours, been packing, still saying yes and showing up to the things I've like committed to, trying to make it work.
Mhm.
Are you back to work? Are you currently working or studying?
So I'm currently studying and school starts next week.
Okay. What do you study, Rose?
So right now I'm preparing for nursing school and I'm just knocking off a few more prereqs.
How many more years or months of nursing school do you have left?
So I'm currently applying and hopefully I'll start nursing school by fall and it's a like a 3 semester program. So I'll be done if everything goes as planned. I'll be done by next year fall.
Nice. Is there like a pre-rec or something like a college degree that you did prior, or do you go straight into nursing? How does nursing work in America?
So in America, there's like 3 major ways you can become a nurse. One is through an associate degree that you get in community college. The other is just a regular 4 year bachelor degree. And also for me, I'm doing a second bachelor. So it's a accelerated program.
Oh, what was your first bachelor's?
It was a double major in philosophy and history and math and science.
Oh, wow. And with just that, could you have gotten like a job in that field, like whether it was history or becoming like a teacher, or did you need to sort of do something extra if you wanted to get a job in that field?
A lot of people actually goes into teaching directly because a lot of private schools don't require you to have like a teaching certificate. And there's other people who goes into law and a variety of things, but I think I knew that I didn't really want to go into teaching. So it was either graduate school or just straight into working. I didn't know I wanted to do nursing until last year. So yeah.
Oh, how'd you find out that you wanted to do nurse?
Well, so after college, I was actually preparing for med school and I was working at a job where I was a surgical tech. So I'll just help like the doctors prepare the room and like when the patients come into the room, I chart of the whole procedure. So I'll interact with a lot of nurses and while working with them, I realized, oh, like there's actually a lot of different jobs in healthcare that I didn't know about, and it seemed like nursing just made more sense to me at the time. Just like commitment wise and also financially, it was a better decision for me.
Oh, were you born and raised in America?
No, so I was born in Beijing and I came over to America for college.
Oh, you have like a really like American accent. Like it doesn't sound like non-Americanized at all. How old were you when you came to Australia? I meant in came to America.
I was 18.
Oh,
Yeah.
did you were you like doing international school in Beijing or yeah, how'd your English get so like good?
So I To preface, like my mom's Korean and my dad's Chinese, and my dad's a pastor. So he was working at a local Chinese church, but they didn't like the idea of like very young babies coming to church because it was back then people thought, oh, like you should stay at home. So my mom decided to take us to an international church, and that's where I kind of learned English growing up.
Oh. And then how did your family migrate to America?
So actually my parents are still in Beijing. It's I just came over here for college. Yeah. So I have a younger sister. Also came here for college, but yeah, my parents are still back in China.
And then do you have to go back to China after you finish your studies, or can you still stay in America? How does it work?
So usually after a bachelor degree, you get like a year of OPT, which is like a internship kind of visa that allows you to work. So I used that up after I graduated college, and then I actually got married in last April, so not so long ago. And then since I got married, like I applied for the green card and it just got approved recently. So that's how I'm staying here right now. But it was a big worry for us for a long time because we weren't sure what to do with my visa.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
How did your Korean mom meet your pastor Chinese dad?
So she was a missionary from Korea and she was in China learning the language, and somebody introduced them while I think he wasn't in seminary just yet, but they met and they just clicked.
Did they both, since very young, studied the Bible and was really religious when young, or did they sort of get into it a bit more seriously at an older age?
I think for my dad, he came to faith when he was a little older. So I think he was in his teenage years. As for my mom, I her family was very involved in church. Like my grandparents was were elders at their local church. So she was pretty immersed in church growing up.
Did you grow up? Was it Christian, Catholic?
Christian Protestant. Yeah.
Okay. And like, how was your, I guess, faith or connection to sort of God? What was it like growing up in China versus when you moved to the States on your own after 18? Was it harder when you were on your own, or did you still somehow independently find a church and kept at it? Did things change? Yeah.
So growing up, I was basically in a Christian bubble. That's what people call it, because my social community was all church-based since I was also homeschooled. So all my friends were Christians, and kind of almost everyone my parents would interact with were also Christians. So going to school in America where it was a secular school, so it was not like a Christian school. It was quite a bit culture shock to me. Because I found out my friends like they have fake IDs, and I was like, you, what do you mean you have fake IDs? Isn't that illegal? But then turns out everyone in America does that. So I was like, okay, cool. We are breaking laws, but not really. I personally went out of my way to find a church to get involved in just because that was a very important part of my life and I wanted to maintain it. But it was a lot of challenge to just having a lot of conversation with people around me and figuring out whether or not these are things that I actually believe or I just believe it because I grew up with it. And I think it was a lot of learning curve, but it was good.
So, like being in America, I guess going to college, seeing things like having a fake ID normalize, things like going to like clubs or festivals and doing drugs,
Mhm.
or things like gambling, all these things are really normalized in America, and people don't think anything about it. do you still now think those things are wrong, or did you come to, or because it was normalized, you came to believe that maybe it wasn't wrong, or it wasn't as black and white as you thought? Yeah.
I think also just on top of like me being a Christian, more of it was coming from China and Korea, doing drugs is very serious. It can get you into jail. And just also drinking age in China and Korea is 18. So you don't need to get a fake ID for drinking if you're in college too. So I think those combined, it was more of a culture shock as well. But now I think there's I feel like as a Christian, we're often taught that like you shouldn't judge someone who's not a Christian based on your Christian belief and standard. So personally, if my non-believer friends are drinking and doing drugs, I don't mind that much as long as they're doing it safely and they're not hurting themselves and it's not causing them harm. If it's causing them harm, obviously like I'm concerned for their well-being, but I think I've learned to not judge them and realize, oh, like this is how people live and it's different from what I've seen. But obviously, I think it's not a good habit to be doing drugs and drinking and smoking and all that. But yeah, I think my stance towards it is like it's just because it's normal doesn't mean it's necessarily the best thing to do. And I think if it's a Christian friend of mine, I might approach them and ask, hey, like, is this really aligning to your belief and faith? Yeah, I'll probably have a talk with them. But I think just in general, I don't really mind what people do as long as it's not hurting them and not hurting someone else. But, yeah.
I don't know if you can relate with this. I had like a similar confusion where, growing up in like in an Asian household, my parents were quite strict. And sort of, I guess I went through high school quite sheltered. And it was like a lot of like, don't do this, don't do that, don't do that. And then I went to university or college in Australia, and I was surrounded by like really smart people, people who were like studying medicine, people who were kind, charismatic, just like really solid people. And there were groups of them, and they would be going to festival raves, they'll be drinking, smoking, doing mushrooms, LSD, ecstasy, and they sort of like in my mind I was like, what the hell? Like these are like really smart people. This is a group of really smart people, and they're all like cool, and they're all like studying med, and but then they're all doing these things that I was taught was bad, but they all seem fine, and they're still smarter than me despite doing those things, and they seem to be doing life really well despite doing those things, and that really sort of confused me for a bit. I was like, what's wrong? What's right?
Yeah, I can definitely relate. Because even at my school, a lot of smart kids came. Like there were people who got into Harvard and then decided to come to our school. So no doubt, like these kids I was having classes with, they're really smart. But then yeah, as you said, I'll see them getting high during the week, getting drunk, doing all kinds of drugs that I don't even know. I didn't even know what heroin was until like the end of the first semester. Um, so yeah, I think at first I was very confused. I was like, they seem so different from outside of class, like compared to when they're in class. Are these like two different people? Do they have two different identities? But then I also think that as human beings, you kind of have like different parts of yourself. And just because they have different habits that might not be the most healthiest habits, doesn't mean they're any lesser than you. And I think that was a very important realization for me to have early on in college. I know some people have it probably even earlier in high school, but for me, it was in college. Yeah.
Interesting. And I guess, what about Christianity gave you that sort of habit of maybe seeing people doing those things as maybe people that are not on the right path?
Mm. Um, Sorry, can you restate the question again?
I guess like I've been reading the Bible, Maybe I just haven't gotten far enough into it. But what about Christianity would lead, I guess, a Christian to see someone that might be smoking or doing drugs or doing weed, as someone that is lesser or someone that is doing something wrong. Yeah.
Um, I think a lot of times, like there are passages in the Bible that says don't get drunk. Being drunk is sinful. Treat your body as a holy temple. And I think a lot of times, sometimes people take that out of context and then say, oh, like if you're doing this, they make a list and list of things that you need to do to be a good Christian. But I personally don't really believe in that because the Bible also says like don't put your like standard as a Christian onto non-believers. So if you're a Christian, yes, treat your body as a holy temple where you're not putting harm to yourself and you're taking care of it. But I think if you're not a Christian, you're free to do what you seem right. And I don't think other Christians should be judging them either.
Got it. And I guess as a Christian, do you eat vitamins? Do you drink caffeine? Do you like doom scroll on like TikTok and like just pump a bunch of dopamine into your system? Do you do any of those things?
Yeah, I think something I had in college was when my peers saw me and they see that I don't drink, I don't do drugs, I don't go to parties. It was because I was very introverted. I'm still super introverted. I don't like loud places. And they'll think, oh my gosh, Rose is a good Christian girl. Like she doesn't do all these things. Like she thinks she's better. No, I still do. I drink coffee. I doom scroll as well. I think there are certain like denominations in Christianity that don't drink caffeine, like the Latter-day Saints. They don't, but Christians are just normal people too.
Yeah, I think because I asked that because you're right, the Bible talks about treating your body as a holy sanctum, but things like doom scrolling, things like pornography, things like social media and seeing the best of other people's life and watching people share the best one, like all those things isn't really good for your sanctum, is it? Caffeine, so just like adding serotonin to your body. That's like an unnatural way to sort of like wake up. Yeah, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, those are fair things to say. I think, well, you do need to do it in moderation, I think, because caffeine isn't, if we're talking about caffeine, it's not as harmful to your body until you're actually addicted to coffee and you need like, I don't know, 6, 8 cups a day. I think at that point, just even from like a normal person point of view, that's something's going wrong there. But I feel like as a Christian, your first and foremost is to love God and love other people. So I think, yes, treating your body as a holy temple is kind of reflective in a way of loving God too, because like God created you and like you should treat yourself with the respect. But yeah, I think those like little things about, oh, like you're putting all these like social media things that aren't necessarily healthy to your mental health. Those are a little bit more nuanced from person to person, and I feel like you can't really have like a set rubric for everyone. And there's a lot of things that just comes down to your personal discretion. And I think that's where also like community and talking with other people kind of helps when you're like, oh, I think I'm struggling with this. Is this bad? And people can help and give you input. Yeah.
That's so cool. And Rose, how did your family decide to send you to the States to study? Like in my mind, I always thought like it would always be like Chinese business people that would send their kids internationally, but your parents were pastors. How did that come to be that you ended up in the States?
Yeah, so well. I was homeschooled, which meant that I only had options to go to college and either already like China was out of the picture because I would need to take the Chinese SAT kind of, and it's really competitive if you're not it's just very competitive in general. So that was out of the picture. And then for a bit, we were considering college in Korea, but then I think we looked into it and we weren't sure of the education they were providing because it's very memorization focused. So you kind of just need to memorize the entire lecture. So naturally, we shifted towards America and kind of Europe. And I ended up applying to mostly American colleges because a lot of European college had like different due dates and they have different requirements for college. And the American ones were they were pretty open and familiar to homeschoolers too. So that was just kind of helpful in the application process. Yeah.
So cool. I guess as an Australian, a lot of my peers, I would love to be able to study in America. I think Australia, we're very lucky that the education system is like subsidized by the
Mhm.
government. And then I think the government actually like it's free. And then once we get a job, we start paying it off. But if we were to go to America, it'd be so expensive for us. Like we'd probably go from like paying nothing to paying like 50 grand a year, which is like impossible for most Australians. What's the best way for people to study in America if that's something they want to do?
Um, Honestly, personally, this might be a hot take. I don't feel like American degrees is that worth it if you don't get the financial aid, or you get a scholarship because it is expensive. And I feel like a lot of times it's more about the connections you get rather than the degree. Yeah, I think for people who's looking into studying in America, it's best to just look for scholarship opportunities and have a good grade to begin with so that the school might give you a merit scholarship. Otherwise, it's the loan that you need to take out, and that racks up so fast, which is kind of the reason why I decided not to go into med school at the moment, because I knew if I went into med school, that's I don't even know how many grants it is. And I was some of the doctors I was working with, they're in their mid 40s and they're telling me they're still paying off their debt. And I was like, that is actually very scary. I don't want to be doing that. Um, but yeah,
Yeah, that would
so
be scary. And I guess, was it how many colleges did you apply to? And was your Chinese sort of high school marks accepted? Could they sort of validate that and be like and use that as a sort of, I guess, comparing to see if you get the scholarship? How did it work?
so for a lot of the American college, they require you either the SAT or the ACT scores. So I sent that in, and I also had like a transcript with all the classes I kind of took in high school. But yeah, I didn't really get a merit scholarship for college, but I did get like a financial aid that helped me to pay for school. So I think also just being an international student reduced a lot of the scholarship opportunities for me because a lot of those opportunities goes for domestic students a lot of times. And also being homeschooled, I think they didn't really believe in my GPA. They thought I made it up, I think. So I applied to about 10 college, I think, or more. I can't remember. I know people now apply to insane number of amounts of college. But yeah, and I heard back from two. So I think just like the combination of a standardized score and me being homeschooled was just not very good. It was not in my favor, but I still made it somehow.
That's pretty cool. And despite that, you still got like financial aid and it definitely makes things a bit easier, right?
Yeah.
Oh. And then how did you go about meeting your husband? Did you meet your husband at church? Did you guys get married like shortly after? Yeah.
So we met in DC. It was where I was working after college, and we met through a dating app called Bumble. I'm not sure, do they have that? Do they use that in Australia too?
They do.
Okay, yeah. And the way we went about it was kind of untraditional. He was applying for PhD programs, and then he got accepted into his PhD program in Houston, and he was asking if I would move to Houston with him, and I was like, no, I'm not gonna move for a boyfriend. And he asked, oh, will you move with me if I marry you? I was like, yeah, that works. So yeah, we did a small elopement, and hopefully down the line we'll have a bigger wedding with both our families over. Yeah.
Wow. And how long from like meeting on Bumble to you moving to Texas after you guys got married or engaged?
So, uh, we got married 10 months after we met on Bumble. And we actually lived very close to each other in DC. So after the first week of knowing each other, we kind of just saw each other every single day because we lived so close to each other. And I think we both of us knew by like early into our relationship, oh, this is someone I see myself being with long term. It was only a question of when we'll get married. So when he got accepted to his PhD program, I think we were faced with a decision of whether or not we'll get married right now or we're going to wait until, because I was planning to go to med school, plan to wait until I'm done with all my programs, which would be, I don't know, 5, 6 years. And that just sounded a little too ridiculous at the time. So yeah.
Interesting. And I guess you talked about when you guys get married, all the family will come over. Um,
Mhm.
is his family not in America? Was he not born and raised in America?
Oh, he's from America. His parents are in Atlanta, and my parents are in Beijing. So, like, we weren't in the same city. And it's just, it's so expensive to fly all the way from China to America. So, my parents didn't come when we eloped, but yeah, when hopefully down the lines, after I become a nurse, we can afford an actual wedding. But also, weddings are so expensive nowadays, and we're actually not quite sure how much we want it because we feel like it's more for the public eye rather than yourself a lot of times.
Yeah, I agree too. Is he also Chinese or Korean, and is he religious as well?
So he's also a Christian. He's actually a Iranian, so his parents are from Iran, but he was born and raised in America.
And then is he more religious than you, or like are you guys like equally like as sort of invested, or what was it like when you guys first met?
I think I would say that I I put a lot more emphasis on faith than he does. And I think that is because I was born and raised in a Christian family. I was very involved in church all throughout like high school, college. And yeah, right now we're both trying to find a church in Houston. And yeah, it's been proven to be harder than we thought it would be. You would think that the more churches there is, it might be easier to find one, but it turns out it's not. So there's that.
How long have you guys been in Houston for?
We've been here since last late May, so about 6 months now.
Hmm. And how long have you been in America, Rose?
I've been in America since August of 2019, but I went back during COVID to Beijing. So, like 4 years roughly, give or take.
And were you in DC for the whole 4 years?
No, so my college was in Maryland, so very close to DC. Um, So about 3 years in Maryland, a year in DC, and now in Houston.
And then when you started in Maryland, was it easy for you to find a church and community straight away? And after 3 years, did you have to restart that process again in Washington and find a new church?
Yeah, so when I first went to Maryland, I was in a city called Annapolis, and it's pretty small, even though it's the capital of Maryland. So there were, when I looked up church, there were only a few options for me within the walking distance because I didn't have a car. So after like a few months, I decided on the church I'm going to attend, and I got involved in the church through volunteering and other stuff. So I stayed there mostly for all 4 years of I mean 3 years. 1 year was I was in China, but yeah, when I moved to DC, I had to start the whole process of looking for church again. And I was lucky enough that I had like a family friend-ish person who recommended me a church. And after I tried it out, I was like, oh, this one, I think I like this one. So I stayed there. But yeah, right now we're still testing different churches out.
Is the process basically every week, every Sunday, go to a different church and feel it out?
I think at first, in the beginning, it's like that. But then after a while, you kind of narrow it down to a few church. So for us, we were attending this one church for a bit, and then we tried out their small group. And I think for both my husband and I, because I'm Asian and he's pretty white passing, but also to just Americans, they can tell that he's not white. So I think there's a lot of that underlying kind of tension and nuance where if we go to a complete Chinese church, he's obviously not Chinese. And if we go to a very predominantly white church, both of us stands out because neither of us are white. So trying to find a diverse enough church for both of us is kind of a challenge.
Interesting. My friend, they've been inviting me, this couple, to their church, and they have an Indonesian church, and I
Mhm.
think the majority of people there are Indonesian. But then I feel like I think probably there's like maybe 20% or 15% of people that aren't Indonesian. Yeah, now I'm thinking about like most churches are predominantly a certain sort of race. Like I remember I used to live opposite of a church, and there was days where it was like all Vietnamese people. I'm Vietnamese, and it was predominantly Vietnamese. Like I was gonna say, is there like a church that's like just Asians in general? But usually it's sort of like one sort of ethnicity out of all the Asians. Yeah. Huh.
Yeah, I think for me, because I grew up in an international church in Beijing, I had people from all over the world. Like I had Australian friends, I had people from Finland, Norway, Americans. So I think trying to look for a church like that in America has been proven to be pretty challenging, where like yeah, as you said, it's either all like one ethnicity or the other, and trying to find somewhere in between is kind of hard.
Do people ever form their own cell groups? I don't know if you guys call it cell groups or sort of Bible study groups, just from people they meet through life, and all those people don't necessarily come from the same church. Is that a thing people do?
I think that does happen. Because like in college, I had people who I studied together that we didn't all go to the same church, but we would study the Bible together. But right now, I feel like we're still in pretty early stage of moving to Houston that we haven't been able to really establish a friend group here yet. Because it's mostly for him, people from school, and then for me, I'm just taking classes in and out, so I haven't been making a lot of friends either. But yeah, definitely people do make small groups that doesn't all attend the same church.
What were you studying in the 1 year when you were in DC, and are you still studying the same thing now in Austin, or have you changed?
Oh, so in DC, I was working, so I wasn't studying. And Houston right now, I'm just taking the classes that's required for nursing because my major was not a STEM majors, which meant like I didn't take a lot of the science prereqs that nursing school requires you to have. So I had to like study all of them um from scratch. But yeah.
Interesting. And then I guess how often do you and your partner like what's your relationship with God like? Are you guys praying every night, praying every morning? Are you reading like a chapter of the Bible a day, or do you just show up on the Sunday and that's when you do things? What's that like, Rose?
So for us, I think while we were dating, I mostly just read Bible on my own, but recently we started reading the Bible during our dinner time and just kind of talking about what we read and our observation. And we pray before a meal throughout the week. Personally, I spend time in the morning to just like read my Bible and pray. But yeah, and then we go to church on Sunday.
And then have you been just reading the Bible from beginning to end, or how do you guys go about picking verses or chapters?
So for my husband, he hasn't read every single books in the Bible. So we just kind of picked out a book that he hasn't read fully through, and we've been kind of reading it chapter by chapter and going through the story.
Got it. Currently, I'm reading what's the third book? Electivus, the third one. Yeah, and then like all the chapters is basically just like instructions. Like I'm reading it and I'm like,
It's
I
a
think
very tedious book to be reading.
yeah, this morning it was like giving me like instructions on what to do if like you had like I forgot like if you had something coming out of your body, then like what to do, like wait 7 days. I'm just reading it. Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like I feel like it's an inside joke among Christians that like Leviticus and Deuteronomy are just so tedious and full of laws. Yeah, it's not an easy book to get through. And at one point you're gonna come across a list of names and genealogy.
Oh no. Yeah. Because you're right. It's like very heavy with like a bunch of rules. I'm trying to like I know like I'm trying to look at the numbers. Like seven comes up a lot. So I think seven is just really solidifying the number seven for me. But like just reading that, I wouldn't have no idea how to discuss a chapter. Like if I read a chapter on like what to do when there's like mold in your house. Like after that chapter, like what am I going to talk about with the person I'm reading it with?
Yeah, I think Leviticus and like a lot of Old Testament books with those kind of rules is very interesting because after Christ, those rules don't apply anymore because those rules were supposed to keep people clean and separate from other people that didn't weren't Israelites. So I think, yeah, it's kind of hard to just read that chapter and talk only in light of that chapter. But when you look at the whole Bible as a whole and the entire picture, it's a little bit easier to talk about it.
Have you read the whole Bible, Rose?
Yeah, because so in Sunday school, they'll do like a challenge where if you read the entire Bible in a year, you get a little prize. So I think I did that like 3 or 4 years in a row. Yeah, as a kid. So I've read the Bible from beginning to end a few times now.
And do you end up ever getting a chance to read other books, like just normal books, or is it just not really?
Yeah, I really like reading books. So, yeah, I've been reading a book called Bel Canto. So it's based on a real event where like the Japanese president, I think, got kidnapped back in the days, but I'm still very early into the books. But it's very interesting.
That's cool. And when you pray, are you having a conversation with God? Are you just saying one of the verses? I don't know, the usual prayer. I think a lot of people say the same thing. Are you praying for other people? What does your prayer usually look like?
I think a variety of different things. Personally, when I'm praying by myself, it's more like a conversation. And then there are times when in like church settings that everyone will pray in the Lord's Prayer where you read the same thing. Or like in a group setting, we pray for each other for a specific prayer request. But personally, I try to keep my kind of prayer life throughout the day where I try not to just like have a single time when I'm just praying to God once a day and just tick it off, but like a constant conversation I'm having throughout the day.
I saw this quote and I've been like listening to it in one of my sort of this sort of like mixtape of a bunch of like like a bunch of motivational clips that I listened to. And one of the quotes is this guy talking about how when you're on an aeroplane, you sort of just have faith in the pilot. You don't really question where the plane is going. You just trust that it's going to get you to the destination. When you're on the bus, you don't really question the driver or the ride. You just sort of have faith that the bus is going to get you home. And if you have faith and really believe in God, you're going to have faith that everything happens for a reason and things are going to work out. And that's something I've been trying to really like double down on and think about because it's hard. Sometimes you might, move to a new city and feel out of place and feel like you're trying to get your standing and you can't find like-minded people. But if you're on an airplane and there's a small bump, you don't really think about it. You're just like, it's fine. The pilot's going to get me there. So I guess it's harder said than done, but I guess that's sort of why I've been trying to really think about it over and over again. Like if I really have faith in God, then everything that's happening, like right now, our company's been bleeding out. We're running out of money. I'm having to go on an overseas trip. So like that's going to lose more money and there's opportunity costs and it's really stressful and it hurts and it's scary. But yeah, if I have faith in God, then I need to believe that it's going to work out and it's going to be okay.
Yeah, it's hard because I feel like sometimes when when Christians will think, oh, like if I don't believe that it's going to be okay when everything's falling apart, that means I don't have faith in God. And like, that means like my faith is weak and whatever. But I feel like personally, perhaps, yes, everything might happen for a reason, but I don't think that reason is often known to us. So I think it's okay to just think, oh my gosh, this just sucks. But there's also a verse in the Bible that says like God's gonna protect you through this. And actually my husband and I were reading the book of Daniel. That's the book we're going through right now, and it talks about Daniel's three friends being thrown into the furnace because they didn't bow to the idol of Nebuchadnezzar, that the king. And they come out completely fine. They're not burned or anything. Even the soldiers that like threw them into the furnace, they died because how hot the furnace was. Right before they walk out, like there was a fourth person in the fire with them. And I think what we were talking is that it's interesting, those three friends, the fourth person doesn't put out the fire, like the fourth person is in the fire with them. So like I think when challenges happens, like oftentimes God doesn't like just clear it all out for you, but instead he is with you and the trials and challenge and whatever you're facing. Sometimes you might not even realize it until you look back, but I think like reading that I was really thinking about, wow, like he's there protecting you even in the fire. Like you might think, oh, why isn't he putting out the fire for me? Why isn't he like, I don't know, putting out a lot of water and like taking it out? But like somehow he's still there. And I think the faith to stand in the fire is more important perhaps than asking, oh, like, why isn't like, yeah, I don't know if that makes sense, but yeah, that's kind of just what I was thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, I think learning to embrace that I'm currently in the fire. It is what it is. I need to be here. God is here with me. versus praying for it to end. I think the first option is probably better for my sanity. It's probably more healthy, embracing it, accepting it, taking it in. And then if I look back, I'm like, God has always saved me just at the very last moment. Like the moment where we ran out of money, a grant came through. The moment the moment I, would get lost or something bad would happen, just when I'd lose hope, something would turn around. He'd always bring the right people to the things I'd organize. As the people who were busy needed to be busy, the people who were free needed to be free for that thing to create that beautiful sort of moment and get together. Yeah, but I guess it's definitely harder than it seems. And I guess you just have to keep practicing faith and keep sort of staying resilient, I guess.
Yeah, I think it's just like keep moving forward, even though you can't really see what's gonna happen.
Yeah. And then Rose, I remember like bumping into your YouTube channel and like you've been like posting content for quite some time. I initially found you through TikTok, but you've been creating content for a long time. What got you into just like documenting your life and creating content, Rose?
So I think I first started YouTube just because I had this clip of me skateboarding and I was like, oh, like I can put music to it. I was like in early high school, so it was when like I first found out iMovie and I could, I learned how to put words to it. And slowly I started filming just a day of my life, a little clips here and there. But I think it really all started when I went to college. So I was away from my family, and I thought it would be a nice way to show them kind of how I live because they're very curious. Oh, how is she doing? What does she eat? Like, how does she do her laundry? So I think that's kind of how I started to film my life. And then I also soon realized, oh, my school is a very small college. It's about 400 people total. So there's not a lot of information up there about the student life. So I started targeting that and just showed a lot of the prospective students how the college life is. And I think that grew some traction, but right now I haven't been uploading that much because I had problem with my computer. But now that that's fixed, I'll be getting back to it, hopefully.
I guess what now at your current state in life, now that you finished college,
Yeah.
what motivates you to upload things or create content now?
Actually, after I graduated college, like I had like this existential crisis because I was like, oh my gosh, I've been filming about my college life for 4 years. What do I film now? And right now, I think it's just to share kind of my life, even though as boring as it may seem, I think I forget like what's boring to me might not be boring to someone else because no one knows like my day is as boring as it may be, it's not for other people because they're not me living my life. And yeah, I think for me, just like creating is such a big part of who I am that even if I'm not creating contents about college and school, it's still the fact that I'm creating something is like motivates me. And also, since I will be applying for nursing school, maybe that's something I can start doing.
Yeah. And then have you ever thought about doing content, like religious content, just sharing the stuff you learn, sharing your relationship with God, or sharing the chapter that you read for that day? Because your parents are both like pastors and missionary. Does it come naturally for you to want to talk about God and Christianity?
I think for me, um, and because I went to a school that is very pretty liberal, I've learned to kind of filter myself when to talk about it because I learned that in America, being a Christian doesn't necessarily mean a good thing. A lot of Christians here are very conservative and some don't believe in vaccine and things like that. So like if you just say you're a Christian, oftentimes they can like judge that, oh, you're those crazy kinds. And so I think personally, I've been keeping my faith a little bit off the social media. And I think also recently it's just social media can be a very political place. So I thought about it, but then once you share your faith, you kind of become this Christian content creator that's only tailored for Christians. And I wasn't, yeah, I was a little wary about that as well. So I haven't really created those things, but it's a good idea though.
Just and what's your younger sibling like? Is it brother or younger sister? And are they religious? Are they studying internationally?
So I have a younger sister. She's also a Christian. She's very different from me. She's she's more of a tomboy. Um, and she's more sporty. But yeah, so right now she's doing a master's in philosophy in New York City. Yeah.
And then do you guys have you guys connected much over the last 5 years that you've been in the States? Are you guys ever in the same place, same time?
So it's funny actually because after I went to college, my college is a little weird. Like they only have one major. We don't have exams. We read books instead, and we talk about it. We have discussion over it. So it's a very nerdy school. And when I first went, my sister was like, I am never applying to that school. That sounds like such a lame place. But end of my freshman year, first semester, it's not even second semester yet. She tells me that, oh, actually, I applied to your school. I was like, okay, you told me you weren't gonna apply ever, but you applied. And she ended up getting it. So we went to the same college as well. And in my senior year, we were actually roommates too. So that was a lot of fun for us.
Very cool.
Yeah.
And did she have it easier when it came to sort of finding other Christian circles and friends? Because I guess you led the way, or was she on her own journey?
I think she and I were very different personality-wise too. She's a little bit more extroverted and outgoing. So she kind of just made friends in her own way, but there were like certain friend groups that would overlap between us with Christian fellowship or some of the sports that we were in together. But yeah, she mostly had her own friend groups and I have mine. And then sometimes we'll overlap, some other times we won't.
What's the age gap between you guys?
It's a year and a half, so pretty close.
That's cool. I guess over the last 6 months, I guess that the main focus has just been settling into Houston, doing the STEM subjects required to get into nursing. Has that been the main focus over the last 6 months?
Yeah, mainly. Just finding places in Houston that we can enjoy and also doing the classes. Because after we moved, immediately I started the summer courses and they were like 5 weeks instead of 16, but you have to learn all the materials from the 16-week courses in 5 weeks. So that was a little insane. But the fall semester, we were more settled in and everything.
You know, like usually go through like different chapters of life, whether it's like going through college, going into nursing school, trying to get a job, focusing on like interviews, focus on personal development, fitness, and you sort of progress and grow. Um,
Mhm.
is it similar in Christianity? Is what you're doing related to Christianity over the last 6 months different to how it was, say, 2, 3 years ago? Do you like grow, or is it just you read the Bible again and again and you just get more and more familiar with the text, and that's all you can do?
I think different stages of life, it'll look very different. Because for me, because I was so involved in church all throughout high school, college. it was these past 6 months has actually been a good time where I kind of stepped back from volunteering at church and more kind of recharge myself because I think I was burning out a little bit because I served at the kids ministry, and I think by the end of my time in DC, I realized, wait, I'm kind of doing this just because I'm used to, at this point, because I was so burnt out. And also kids have changed in the past decade a lot, I think, with the social medias and things that they're exposed to. They're a lot different nowadays compared to when I first started out. So I think every stage of life, there are different things that you're personally struggling with, and that kind of reflects in your faith journey too.
Mm. Would a metaphor for that, like for example, exercise, be like a good metaphor? Like, you know how like how I exercise now, it's quite similar to how I used to exercise maybe 2, 3 years ago. It's definitely more refined. I'm definitely more knowledgeable of the macros, and I'm like eating protein powder, and I'm doing a lot more stretching. But I'm basically like I wouldn't be surprised if in 5 years' time my exercise is quite the same, but just has some small tweaks to it. But I guess fundamentally I'm just still exercising. Is that what sort of studying and being faithful, is that a great metaphor? Is it's or not really?
I think a little, yeah. It's like I feel like something with faith is you have to be constantly reminding yourself of the truth in the gospel because it's very easy to forget that there's grace when you make mistakes and just simple things. And I think like exercise, it needs like constant reminding and it constantly, and also faith is like a relationship with God. So you need to maintain that relationship too. And with time, like you gain more insights or you gain more wisdom, but fundamentally it's kind of the same.
Has there ever been, do you have any stories of signs or experiences that were like, whoa, that you've experienced throughout your life, like during prayer or things that you prayed for and there was a sign that instantly confirmed it? Have you ever had any of those like wow moments?
Um, I have people around me who had this experience, but personally, I never really had like a almost like a magical wow moment. I think a lot of times it's for me, it's very subtle. And I think God speaks to different people in different ways. Yeah, personally, I remember like going back to America after my winter break of freshman year, and I was kind of sad going back to America. I'm like, oh, I'm going away from my family again. And my seat on the airplane was the window seat when I want the aisle seat because it's just easier to move around if you're on a long flight. So I was a little disappointed. I was like, oh, I got a window seat for 15 hours. This sucks. But then as I was flying, I didn't know, but like the plane flight would go kind of near the Alaska area, so a little bit north. It didn't go straight from Beijing to the DC. And a flight attendant like motioned to me to like look out the window. I was like, what's out there? It's like pitch dark. And I look over and I see the Northern Lights. And I was like, wow, like if I got into the aisle seat, I would not have seen that. And it's like in those small moments, you're like, oh, I feel like it's like a little gift from God in a way. You might say it's a coincidence, but I think in those little moments, I'm like, oh, I really feel like God loves me in those small moments.
I remember I was sort of at this startup in San Francisco for 9 months. Every 3 months, I'd fly back to Australia, fly to America to reset my sort of my ESTA visa. And on the fourth time I got rejected, I was sent back to Australia. They stripped my American sort of tourist visa. And I was trying so hard to get back to the States. Like I really liked the people I met. And I was like applying for like work visas. I was applying for like O1 talented visa. I was just trying. And I remember I flew to the west coast Australia to try get a visa at the US embassy there, and I got rejected in Sydney. I was rejected again and again and again. And eventually I took it as a sign from God. I was like, you know what? Like, let me just like take this sign and let me just resettle in Australia and rebuild my life again and sort of rebuild my roots. And I'm glad that happened so. Like I think at that time, I think California, San Francisco started to turn in a bad way after like 2020, 2021 during COVID. I think I also learned what I needed to learn in that setting. I was ready to sort of go off and do something of my own again. So it was the right timing. And I'm glad that I guess God sort of just constantly gave me those rejections because I was so stubborn. I really wanted to go back to the States. But he sort of got through to me and yeah, I'm so grateful that it happened so.
Yeah, I think sometimes like God kind of speaks to us through like closing the doors for us. Yeah. And if you still don't listen, he might even close the windows for you.
Yeah. And I think because I recently, a year ago, a year and a half ago, I got accepted for like a tourist visa. So now I can travel back to America whenever I want. But he gave it back to me when I was finally content with Australia and I no longer had that urge to go back to America immediately. So I guess when you're ready, God would sort of give you what you're looking for. So I guess I'm gonna have to be in the fire and furnace for a bit longer. And until I'm ready to get out of it, he's going to let me get out of it then. Awesome, Rose. So I got two more questions that I usually end these podcasts with. So before we go into it, any questions for me? If not, we'll jump into the last two questions.
Um, Not exactly. I guess if it's not too personal, like I'm a little curious of your background in Christianity. Yeah, if you don't mind sharing.
Yeah, so I grew up in a Buddhist household. My parents are Buddhists. My dad was quite he would follow all this sort of he'll go to the temple. We'd sort of hold we would pray for our sort of grandparents that were passed away. I think my dad sort of like I wouldn't say he's an atheist, but he sort of still followed the traditions.
Mhm.
Um, and then in high school one of my uncles tutored me in math and he did like a math degree. He was also really into philosophy and he's like a straight hardcore atheist. So that really sort of had a huge influence on me. Like I learned a lot about philosophy, but then he was like a straight hardcore atheist. So I got very, very logical from that. And then I guess going to university, doing my own thing, getting into business, going to the States. I think I started to get a bit more spiritual, got into personal development, really believed in sort of manifestation, sort of feeding positivity in your mind. And then in 2023, I met a friend named Nick in New Zealand as I was traveling, and he's from UK, London. And he was I just randomly bumped into him at this sort of spa and we start talking. And then I find out that he used to be a hardcore atheist, then he sort of converted to Christianity and he hasn't looked back since and he's been happy ever since. And we're talking about God and talking about religion. And then we maintain these weekly Zoom calls. Every week we'd jump on a Zoom call, me from Sydney, him from London. And throughout that, I got to learn more about God through him. And he also motivated me to read the New Testament. So I read the New Testament last year, or like at least like two-thirds of it. And I remember, and he also taught me how to pray. We would sometimes pray together at the end of our Zoom calls. And then there was one day I just haven't connected in a while and I haven't prayed in a while. So I prayed with him. He also, like, I tried a month of praying every day and talking to God every day. He also helped me catalyze that. But there was a period where I just didn't do any of that for a while. And then we ended the corner prayer. And so thought of an old friend from high school, Natasha. I remember a few times she was just randomly in high school just asked me, "Hey, Andy, what's your thoughts on God?" And I'd be like, oh, I'm not too sure. Like I'll have questions. and would have small discussions about that. So I pinged, I was like, hey, I was just praying with my friend Nick. Somehow that you doing that in high school popped in my mind. Hope you and your newborn son is doing well. And then she replied and she was like, hey, do you want to come to church this week? I was like, all right, I'll go to church. So that was my first time going to Indonesian church. And then since then, I've been to the church maybe one or two times more at different events like Christmas or picnic. I've been to their cell groups, sort of hung out with their group of people, and I still talk to Nick. I started reading the Bible earlier this year from the very beginning. So yeah, I guess that's been my journey, summed up, compressed.
It's really cool though. But yeah.
Thank you.
Don't give up on Leviticus. You have a long way to go.
I'm gonna keep reading it. Yeah, I think I'm like in number 17 out of 27. So 10, I've been reading one chapter a day. So in 10 days, I'll be finished with Leviticus. I'm pretty keen to. I know there's some interesting books coming up in the Old Testament. I'm really excited to get into. I can't remember the name of it, but I'm gonna keep going. And I think it's great learning. I'm learning a lot about the Bible, and I think once I finish the Bible, I'll be even like at a better standing on understanding what Christianity is about, what the Bible is about, and my thoughts would hold more weight. So that's another reason why I really wanted to read the Bible.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Cool.
Question one out of the two, any recent discoveries that you've been implementing to your day-to-day life, Rose?
Recent discoveries. How recent are we talking about?
Well, we can do just the last thing that you started implementing to your day-to-day life, and you're like, oh, this is actually pretty good, and you've maintained it since then.
I feel like my day is pretty much the same almost every day, but I just started working out like every day for a bit, especially after coming to Houston. And it's been interesting because I was never the sporty kind of person. So, and I also hated running in college as well, but I'll just force myself to run because I'm like, apparently it's good for your mental health and body. I don't know how because I'm miserable on this machine right now. But I've been working out and like I can slowly see a little bit of change in my body and like I can tell like, oh, I'm a little bit stronger. This is very interesting, very cool. Although like it's not like I'm getting super buff or anything. I think it's been really good for my um mental health actually. Yeah, so that's been kind of cool. And also like when I work out, I like to walk on incline and I'll just read on the incline with my little iPad. So it's like getting two birds with one stone. I get to read, I get to work out.
And you talked about mental health.
Mhm.
Yeah, like I would have always thought that if someone was like reading the Bible every day, praying every day, naturally you'd be like quite optimistic and negativity or mental health wouldn't really come into play, but I guess not, right?
No, I think that's something that's a stereotype a lot of people have towards Christians. And even in Christian community, I feel like sometimes you're looked down on if you struggle with mental health. And actually, mental health is something I'm pretty passionate about. And hopefully one day I can get more into it as like a profession and career, but we'll see about that. But if you in the Bible, you'll see people who struggles with mental health. I think a very good example is like Psalms written by David. Like almost every other psalm, you can see this person is lamenting and saying, like, why am I in this situation? Everything sucks. Where are you, God? And then also in Kings, which you'll read soon, there's also a prophet called Elijah who's gonna be like, just kill me, God. And that's not very positive or like Christian-like almost. So I think you really see that Christians are also flawed, but it's only through God like you really grow and experience grace, I think. So, yeah, Christians also struggle with the mental health. That does not equate to your like level of faith, I think. And yeah.
Throughout your whole life, has there ever been any periods where you were unsure or you had less faith or you were unsure that God existed, or has that never ever even been a thing for you?
I think for me, I never really doubted that God's existence. I think because I was so involved in a Christian community from an early age and I really felt his presence, like that was never a doubt for me, but there were times where I would feel like I'm a little far from God than other times. And it's funny because like in those times I also see how like God kind of brings me back when I'm almost at the last straw. Um, but yeah, like I think different people goes through different stages of faith. But personally, I never really doubted his existence, I think. Yeah.
There's this guy that I follow, this guy named Luke Belmar, and he talks about this book in the Bible, and I've heard a few people talk about it, and I don't know which one, but I'm keen to get to that book. I think it's a story of, I don't know, maybe it's a farmer who had everything, and then God just, I don't know, to test him or for whatever reason, took everything away from him, and I think he still remained faithful. Do you know which book that may be?
I think that's Book of Job.
Oh yes, that's it. Like, how far am I from Book of Job?
Um,
Oh, pretty far, I guess.
a little far, but you'll get there soon.
All right, all right. I want to get to the Book of Job.
Mhm.
Uh, okay. Last question. Any personal goals or focus for the next 6 months, Rose? That's not related to work or studies.
Personal goals. I think to start posting on YouTube regularly again. It's kind of hard once you stop doing it to get back into it. So there's that. And other than that, also I personally like writing, so I'm trying to write a little more regularly on top of school and everything. I think mainly those two.
What do you usually write about?
So I like writing stories and sometimes I like little poems, but yeah, I personally think they're a little silly, so I don't really share them. I used to share them more, but nowadays I feel like I got them more and more like private as I grew older. And I feel like social media is such like a easy way to be super public about your life. And I realized, oh, I kind of want some part of my life like only to myself, kind of as selfish as it might sound. But yeah, I'm working on like a little romance novel that's turning into like a mystery. So we'll see how that goes.
And I guess, do you enjoy writing fiction stories?
Yeah, mostly fiction, I think.
Cool. In Christianity, do people get divorced? Is that allowed, or yeah, how does that work? Like what happens when someone starts growing apart to their partner or start growing away or start just being like, people grow at different rates, they go through different paths. Um, do you just through God you just stay together, or how does it usually work?
So I think it's a little different for each denomination if we're talking about more technically, like in Catholic Church. If you're a Catholic, they don't believe in divorce, but people still get divorced nowadays. And I think Protestant are a little bit more lenient about it. But a lot of Christians, to a lot of Christians, marriage is a commitment. So like through thick or thin, you're like till death to do us apart. So I think it depends. I obviously if like the relationship is abusive and like there's domestic violence, I think divorce might be the best option. But other than that, I think it's important to work out and remember that, like, once you get married, it's not just lovey-dovey every day. It's more of a concrete commitment to stay loyal to each other, and it's a partnership to work it through your challenges and difficulties. But yeah, I think if it's needed, personally, my point of view is like if it's really absolutely needed, then you should get a divorce. But if it's not, I think it's important and also in a way a testament to your faith, to both of the husband and wife faith to remain in the marriage.
Mm. I guess like based on sort of how you and your husband met, you guys sort of like it clicked straight away, right? Like after the first week, you guys were hanging out every single day, or sort of like, was it like a love at first sight? How would you describe it?
Um, I don't think I wouldn't necessarily say it's love at first sight because I don't really believe that. I actually frown upon that in media a lot. But we did like we were attracted to each other pretty early on because online dating can be weird and like you can meet a lot of crazy people. So I think neither of us had like a lot of expectations, and then we're like, oh, you're actually kind of cool, and we actually can have a lot of conversations, and we live super close. We like each other, so I guess this is gonna work out.
Was it like how about soulmates? Do you believe in soulmates, or is that something you frown on as well?
Um, I feel like by soulmates, do you mean like there's only one other person in life that like you click with, or
Someone that like is like a like just like a perfect synergy. It's like a perfect fit. Someone that really understands you fully, you understand fully, and it's just like the perfect match. There's this sort of like invisible string connecting you guys together.
um, I I think there are like people you can deeply connect with, definitely, and like you're drawn to each other. And like God kind of it prepares you for that person in a way, but I don't think there's one single person out there for someone. I think that's not a really healthy idea to have, almost to think that there's the one person perfect for you, because everyone's going to be imperfect and you have to work through that imperfections to be a good partner to them and for them to be a good partner to you. But yeah, I think both me and my husband, we try to be a good partner to each other. Yeah, I don't really believe like the soulmate in the sense that there's the perfect person out there for you, but I think the idea that there are people out there waiting to be discovered by you is kind of cool. And as a writer, I'm like, it's such a cool idea.
But you don't believe in it, right? It's like a cool idea, but you don't believe in it.
Yeah, like the idea that there's one singular perfect person for you, I don't believe that. I don't think. Because like that kind of implies that you need to be perfect too in a way. And I don't think that's true and that's possible.
It's weird. How come the Bible doesn't talk much about children? I know that's something they don't mention. Do they talk much about marriage and finding the right partner? Yeah.
I feel like the Bible doesn't necessarily talk about perfect person. There's more about finding a partner who's equally yoked, which kind of just means like find someone who's in your faith, who has the same faith as you. But also talks about if you're married already and you're a believer, but the husband is not, like, don't go and divorce him. That's kind of silly. Don't do that. There are like verses about like how what the wife and husband's role should look like and like how they should love each other. And I think the most important thing is that marriage is almost a reflection of what Christ and his church is. Like Christ loves the church unconditionally, and that's how the husband should love the wife. And just as church is loyal to Christ and loves Christ, like that's how the wife should love the husband too.
Yeah. Because I think I've always like I've met amazing people, but it's hard to find like you people are always gonna have different goals. The goals are gonna change over time. You're gonna be moving at different paces. You're gonna have different ambitions. And especially over a period of 60 years to maintain that to be the same, that's even harder. And I guess if you want to just sort of be faithful and stick to it for the sake of sticking to it, it's going to be like a 60-year, not battle, but it's going to be not battle, not compromising, not settling, but it's going to be a 60-year of not work, but just the lack of better words. I don't know what the word best word is, but you'd have to find someone really, really compatible, right? Someone that's really special for you, right?
Yeah. I do think that sometimes when people break up saying that, oh, they weren't compatible with me, I think that that's a cop out excuse a lot of times when people say that. Um, but I do think like as a Christian, when you get married, through all the different goals you have in life, you also have one goal, which is to live for the glory of God. And I think having that same goal as Christians kind of binds you together. And I see that in my parents' marriage too, because like both of them are like in ministry. That's one thing that kind of keeps them together and serves as a foundation for their marriage too. But yeah, I think different marriage have different things that keeps them together.
Interesting. And you just shared like when people break up and they say not compatible and that being a cop out, what do you think the real non-cop out answer would usually be?
Um, I think that's hard because when people break up, I feel like there's a lot of underlying emotions and conflicts that weren't really communicated a lot of times. And it built up to a point where they feel like it can't be brought up or like can't be resolved. So I think it really depends from case to case. But at least from what I've seen, when some of my friends are like, oh, I don't think I'm compatible with this person, I'm like, did you actually tell this person about how you were feeling? Or were you just assuming that they knew how you felt? Because I think those are very different things. Yeah, it's different for everyone, I think.
My friend's church, it's quite
Mhm.
interesting. It's literally just split between people who are in a relationship for a very, very long time, or people who haven't been in a relationship for a very, very long time. There's
Mhm.
definitely like no in between. But I guess that's a testament. I guess basically that just means that they're patient, and once they commit to something, they commit to it for a long time.
Yeah. And I think there are people who just are content when not seeing anyone. So,
Mm, mm,
yeah.
that's
Like
true.
my sister, she's not dating anyone and she's happy about it. So,
Yeah.
there's that.
Yeah, that's a good point. Do you have any pre-recorded videos of your younger self to future you that you've yet sort of watched it and done a response to your past self?
I'm actually not sure because I knew I did one in my freshman year, but I think that's about it. Yeah, I don't think I have more, but there is this one website that allows you to write letters to your future self. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but you can write a letter and then they'll email it to you. So I kind of do that every year, and there's one that's gonna be arriving in about 5 years, so we'll see.
And what day do you set it to receive every year?
So for the yearly one, I set it for January 1st. So that's something I've been I like every year I kind of look forward to it. And for the every 5 year one, I set it to my birthday. So it's like a little surprise to me.
That's so cool. What did the one 1st of Jan this year talk about?
Um, I think it was asking about what I was doing right now and if I was still talking with the friends I had in college because I think yeah, because when I wrote it, I was working in DC. So it was asking me, hey, like where are you right now? Like what are you doing? And it also had some encouragement for myself telling me like, remember what's the most important thing in life. It's not about the achievements you get. It's about how you live your life, how you love other people, how you influence them and be encouragement to them. Like, and don't doubt yourself too much.
How did you respond to the email, and what did you write for your future self next year?
So I actually haven't written to my future self. It's on my to-do list. That's something I need to check off. But I'm a little curious because I'm not sure if I'll be in nursing school. Like, did I find a church to settle down in, or all that questions. So we'll see.
And I'm thinking about I want to do something similar for myself now. I think it's such a cool routine. Yeah, such a valuable routine, I reckon. Yeah.
It's called FutureMe.com. So you can just put it on Google, it'll pop up.
Okay, I'll look into it. Rose, thank you so much for your time. Where can people get more of you?
So I'm on TikTok as you've how you found me, but I think I've heard that it's getting banned. So we'll see. But I'm also on YouTube, and you can also find my photography Instagram account where I post my photography. Yeah, it's I'm also on YouTube, Instagram, and sometimes on my blog, although I don't post that much.
And what's the handle for those different things?
So for my YouTube, let's see, I think it's called for YouTube, it's just rose.john. If you look it up, you'll find me. And Instagram, it's a little more complicated. It's Stella Rose photography. And for my blog, if you really want to find it, you'll need to dig through it. Dig through my YouTube to find it.
Okay, we'll link it in the description. We'll see if my editor can find the blog link. But yeah, thank you so much for your time. This was a fun conversation. I love how you have this sort of really kind energy to you. You have this very honest and sort of energy to you, and yet you have this sort of like just calm. You're just like this calm, chill person trying to go through life, trying to figure it out. Energy that's sort of the vibe I'm getting.
Thank you. But yeah, thank you so much for having me. I enjoyed this time together.
Likewise. Guys, if you made it this far, hopefully you guys got some value and fun from listening to this episode. Please let me know your thoughts, and I'll see you guys next week on another episode. Peace.